here's what I know. Someone's going to have to start the fight for Nebraska. All right, so I'm here to fight for Nebraska. And finally, the team grows up. It's what people always ask me about year 3. Finally, the team grows up, and they're like, well, I got to go make the play.
It's time to join the Husker Huddle with Nick Handley and Grant Hansen.
Hey, welcome into another edition of Husker Huddle. Myself, Nick Handley, and Grant Hansen as we get into the second game of the Nebraska football season. We get to finally react to a game, so everything.
Yes.
This is what we have been waiting for a very long time. And I know there's probably some interesting mixed emotion about what everybody had a chance to see other than the traffic jam that people experienced on their way to Arrowhead.
No, I was going to say.
Us too?
That emotion.
That was the most frustrating.
Not mixed.
That was, yes. I think
that
we could
mission,
all
that,
agree.
that emotion is like 100% rage.
That was
There's
brutal.
nothing else going on other than people thinking, what in the world is happening? I told you this. I lost 45 minutes on the way down, 45 minutes of my life because somebody was painting one lane of the road.
Yeah.
And only one person can get by on. So they had one lane of the 4 closed.
Mm-hmm.
That was brutal.
All the lane closures, normally when you're rolling on I-29 or even just making your way up in the various ways to the Kansas City area from Nebraska, you'll notice that and you're like, oh man, it'd be nice if they could stretch out this lane a little bit.
Yeah.
But when everybody has the exact same idea because the tailgate lot is going to open at 3:30 and we all decide to leave right around 11 or 10,
o'clock.
That's what happens.
Now, the saving grace is that it was nice out.
It was beautiful.
So when we had to slow to a complete stop, it was great to just crack the window down, stick the arm out. Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
That was the one nice part about it. Otherwise, though, it was brutal. And it was also
rough.
funny because I was chatting with Evan Bland yesterday or a couple of days ago at Nebraska media availability. And he, along with others of us, were forced off-road or taken off-road by Apple Maps saying, hey, this way is faster. This will cut off some time. So we went off a different way through St. Joe that I'd never gone before.
Yep.
And I think there's maybe, if you were sent that way, please comment below.
Yeah, I'd love to know. Did that
tell
work?
us about that.
There was the Corning exit was just staring me right in the eye. I'm like, do I just take that? And then anytime we saw a herd of Nebraska plates get off on an exit, we're like, oh, do they know something we don't? Should we follow them? Or like, you know what? Let's just keep heading to our destination. But anyway, if you had a chance to experience that, we don't need to rehash that because that's like opening up a bad wound.
We've done enough.
Yeah.
However, as far as this show, we've just gotten started on this show. We're only 6 episodes deep at this point. We're building this thing up along with your help. And so we appreciate that. If you've been a regular or a continuing or rather new listener, thank you for being here. Give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube page here, or give us a review on Spotify if you would, and
Those
Apple
help.
Podcasts. Those help us out. So give us 5 stars there if you like what you have seen. If you don't like what you've seen, don't give us a review.
Yeah, just stay away. Just
stay
move
away.
on to somebody else's stuff. That's what we prefer.
And later on in the show, we'll have the mailbag for you here as well. So get involved with that with us next week. We'll answer your questions. Email us at huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. That's huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. We'll flash that email throughout the show on the screen. So go ahead and hit us up there or in our comment section. We're excited to be underway with Nebraska football, and we're interested to hear what your thoughts are. And I'm sure you have plenty of them following the Cincinnati game, and you'll have more after the Akron game, I'm sure.
1-0, 1-score victory.
That too.
Not a bad way to start out the 2025
Couple of boxes
season.
checked. Yeah, I have opinions as well, and we can dive into those after following our prime cuts for the week. So unless you have any without any further ado.
Oh, I was just going to say, coming up on the show, we are going to be talking to Mike Schafer, Husker 24/7 Sports. Always great when we can get Schaf's thoughts on
Fantastic
everything.
chat with him.
Most likely he'll probably throw in a Vikings thing or two.
No, I think that's
hopefully not. But,
minus 1,000 for that. It's going to happen.
Hopefully not. But he and I cannot talk about our beloved Cleveland baseball team anymore. So, but we will get hit, also always on the recruiting trail. We're always talking about Cruton, so we'll get his thoughts on all of that and his impressions of Nebraska's season opener in that 20-17 victory against Cincinnati. Also, you got a good catch up with Teddy Prochazka. Teddy Prochazka, popular guy this week too. And it's just a cool story of Teddy, 100. What he's endured. I don't care. I love that he's a local guy, but I don't care about the fact that he's local or if he wasn't local. That story, if any athlete went through what he's gone through when it comes to the injuries and the amount of injuries, and just when he thinks he's got all that behind him, then another one happens, to see him in the rotation, but as the starter, not because it was by default, because he earned it too. It's a great redemption story. And I'm really excited for everybody to have a chance to see and listen to Grant's interview with Teddy Prochazka. And as you mentioned, it's time for our Omaha Steaks Prime Cuts. Omaha Steaks, your go-to for game day. From sizzling steaks to all your tailgate favorites, they've got you covered. Omaha Steaks, proud partner of Nebraska Athletics. Here is this week's Omaha Steaks Prime Cuts.
Yeah, I had a couple guys saying, you need to do that every week. And I was like, yeah, right. So, I've always felt like this should be about the team. I walk out the side, let the team run out. But it was fun to do, to be quite honest with you. And my wife commented on the look on they put that video out, the look on my face. But that's how I feel about this team. I like this team a lot. And I like being around them. I like who they are as people. And so they bring joy to me. And so running out with them was really a fun moment for me. One of the funner moments I've had. I've never run out with a team before, ever, I don't think. Ever. So that's the first time in my whole career of maybe someone can find something. I don't remember it, but I don't remember ever running out. And certainly not that fast. So it's as fast as I can run. My thought process behind that was, we were kind of in in a 2-minute type situation, and the clock was running down, and Hogue was getting the play in, and it was kind of going in and out on the mic. So, I kind of heard the scratches of the play, and I was like, we're going to roll with it. And brought Jacory across, and they kind of were still scrambling, but the clock, there was a lot going on, and I just look out there and it's one-on-one. I'm like, I'm going to trust my guy to make a play, and you saw exactly that. He went up there and made a beautiful play. Defensive line, it's not a thinking man's position. It's a get off the ball, create a new line of scrimmage, get off blocks, make tackles, be disruptive. I think sometimes at times we were a little bit too fit oriented, meaning am I in the right place, or maybe the processing wasn't going as fast. But your D-line has got to be a bunch of guys that just freaking go and think about things later.
Not happy with 20 points. We had 9 possessions. It was a possession type game. The yards per play isn't what I expect. Explosive plays isn't what I expect. We're going to keep harping on that. Unfortunately, I didn't see it out there again today. How do you fix that? One's the structure of the defense that we played and what the game plan was. That allowed us to win.
Yeah, it's the same mindset that me and Tyler took to it. Is just each day find something to improve on and improve on it. And that's the best way. Coach Rules talked about, if you want to improve the team, improve yourself first. And I think as an offensive line, we've really taken to that. And that same group, those 3 guys are doing that. It's tough competition each day, and you see it on film. You see it in the meeting rooms. And it's great to see, because I know that the entire line's getting better as those guys get better,
Our Prime Cuts brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Again, your go-to for game day, from sizzling steaks to all of your tailgate favorites. They got you covered. Omaha Steaks, proud partner of Nebraska Athletics. I want to start with Dana Holgerson's tone, because you're watching this game, I'm watching this game.
Yep.
And I know what we expected. And I said this last week, that I anticipated this offense to come out extremely wide open, taking shots, really putting a lot of the pressure on Cincinnati. Clearly, they anticipated that too.
Sure.
So they were going to take away the explosives. You've heard all week about the 3 high safety approach that Cincinnati did. All of those things that they set out to do. I think the biggest thing that I liked about the response, once they had to try to distance themselves in that game, there were plays to be made. There was I think a very careful approach out of what is still a young quarterback in Dylan Riley. He doesn't carry himself as a young player, but for a guy that could be easy for the adrenaline to be pumping, to be in that stadium in front of that amazing crowd, to try to force the issue every now and then, because you feel like at times the offense was stalled. Sure. He didn't do that. And I think that showed maturity in that approach.
That, to me, that's one of the reasons to feel really positive about this offense. I know there were maybe points where people felt like the offensive line was a mixed bag. I think that's probably fair to say, But they completely neutralized Dante Corleone. He was not involved really at all in the entire game. He had one tackle. So you like that, and you generally, I think, like the way that they protected Dillon in this game, and you have to also like the way that Dillon executed. He set a career high for completions. Yeah. He threw the ball 40-plus times. How rare is it that Nebraska is able to win a close game when they're throwing that much, or just win a game, period, when they've thrown that much in recent days? Now, the problem is, and you heard Holgorsen talk about that, is that you threw it a ton, and you only had 20 points. Now, Nebraska actually, in terms of what are considered big plays, so that's passes of 15 or more yards and runs of 10 or more yards. So Nebraska actually outgained Cincinnati in this game, and had more big plays in this game. Nebraska is evenly split, 4 rush, 4 pass. Now, the problem was only one of those big plays went for more than 20 yards, and only 3 of the 8 went for more than 15.
Right.
So they were big plays, but they are at the minimum of that definition. And so that is the next step for me. That's what I want to see as Nebraska goes forward to Akron and Houston Christian is, okay, can you rip a 50-yard play? Can you get a 45, 35-yard run? That's what you need to see next. And it felt like it was close.
Yeah.
And you could hear it. You could hear it. Damon Benning on the broadcast, he was just saying over and over and over again, Emmett's going to break one of these. He's so close to breaking one of these. And they were.
If Ja'Cory doesn't get tripped up on that on the one end around, that's a huge play.
The jet touch pass. Yes.
That would have been a house call if he doesn't get tripped up right there.
So they were close. I mean, they were holding the edge of a block for one fraction of a second longer, getting a little bit more extra balance. They were right there, but they didn't convert. They left 4 points out on the board on a false start on the goal line. So I get it. Also, at the same time, I don't know why the fan base is so mixed on a lot of these things. I feel like there was a lot more negative coming out of that game than I thought there would be. And look, if Nebraska doesn't get that play from Malcolm Hartzog, I think that negativity is justified. That's the problem, though. He made that play. And so,
how many times have they not made that play?
Exactly. And it's not like you should look at this just because Malcolm Hartzog made that pick. You should not look at this as all sunshine and rainbows. That's not what I'm saying. Like, there's definitely room for improvement. But I feel like the overall, at least the vocal part of the fan base that's online, and maybe that's part of my problem, has been more negative than positive about this game. And I'm surprised by that in some ways because it doesn't, as we'll talk later with Mike Schafer about a lot of this, you're not leaving a whole lot of room for improvement in the way that you think about the team. If you're saying, 20-17, win a close game. They dominated that first half. They completely dominated that first half. And if you look at the big plays that swung this game, Nebraska came out on the right side of almost all of them.
Yeah.
And if you think back to Iowa a year ago, Illinois a year ago, how many of those big plays that all went Illinois' way or all went Iowa's way down the stretch, you think, man, if you flip one of those things around, you flip the other way, Nebraska wins that game. And this time in this game, Nebraska's on the other side of it. Dillon gets sacked. He recovers his own fumble. You have the play by Hartzog that he makes after getting burnt on a 4th down that could have been the game and then giving up a big PI that moves Cincinnati well into field goal range. He makes the big play late to turn the game around. The 4th down touchdown to Dane Key, the 50-50 ball to Isaiah Hunter. All of these different plays that Nebraska made and they had to make to win that game, they made. They would not have made those, I would argue, a year ago. 1 or 2 or 3 of those either would be a drop or the fumble actually happens or Vincent Shavers doesn't punch that ball out before half.
Yep.
And then Nebraska comes out on the losing side 17-13.
Special teams, too. Special teams, at least from the kicking standpoint. And there's real good evidence right there of how important special teams is in those one-score games. You get the long field goal, but you also played the field position type game. In a game where Nebraska controlled the time of possession, in a game maybe they didn't really even care about that, thinking that they were just going to score at will or at least have a lot more explosive plays. You got into a fistfight the way that Cincinnati was trying to defend this Nebraska team, and they were able to do enough offensively, but also lean on that third phase, which you could not lean on in many previous years, where it was a dumpster fire in all aspects. That was a very positive thing. Now, I got to move on to some of the other clips that we heard too. This is the concern. that we had going in. Defensive line. John Butler talked about that in our prime cuts. This is what I was discussing with you the last couple of weeks of there's going to be some moments early in this season where this defense is going to get gashed from time to time, where there's going to be some run fits that are just going to be unsuccessful. A lot of those things, as John Butler talked about, being too concerned about the fit as opposed to being more disruptive. I like how he said trying to create that new line of scrimmage. This is what I do know. Those guys individually are more than capable of doing what John Butler just said right there. This is that process of those guys coming together. And when you look at a quarterback like Sorsby that has that athleticism, you and I talked about this. The one concern that we had was his ability to extend plays.
Yep.
And when you think you have everything assignment-wise taken care of, there's going to be those improvisation skills from a guy like Sorsby that can make you feel dejected because you did everything else right, but he's able to extend those plays. And he did that in this game. But as far as being able to defend the run, this is something that is going to continue to be a work in progress. And I think I'm not overly panicked because I said I expected to see a little bit of this early on. Now, the question is, by the time you get to Michigan, do you have enough reps together as a group, that front seven as a group, to make that be the difference of a group that got burned a few times, maybe was out of assignment a little bit, to a very disruptive group like John Butler talked about?
So, I came down on the other side of it from you, right? Going into this game, I said, if Nebraska gets routinely gashed, I'm going to be alarmed going forward. And here's why I'm not now, or maybe not as alarmed as perhaps my talk would have led you to believe I would be coming into this game. If you heard me a couple of weeks ago, Sorsby I think, did a large percentage of the damage. I mean, he had 96 of the 202 yards rushing, 29. He had a 29-yard scramble. Mm-hmm. It was the biggest play that Nebraska allowed all game. And he routinely did damage to Nebraska with his legs. And some of that was contained. Some of that was just the middle of the defense sort of just vacated. And there was clear space for him to step up and run, and he took it. I feel like those things are correctable. Mm-hmm. I think we'll see. I mean, there is definitely maybe some concern about guys getting blown off the ball. Especially in the interior. Yeah. But I want to see how that develops. And again, like if you look at the body of work for Nebraska defensively in this game, you have to be happy with 271 yards of total offense. They forced 2 turnovers. Both were in key moments. Mm-hmm. And so, I'll give up some of the aesthetics of an excellent performance from a rushing perspective, like we saw a couple of years ago, largely driven by Tony White's defense, which did an excellent job at Florida State against Alabama this week. I'll give up some of that. Like Cincinnati averaged more yards per play than Nebraska did, 4.9 yards per play. Like some of that is the type of defense that Nebraska was facing, right? I will give up the aesthetics if Nebraska makes the key plays and key moments to win games, and that's what they did.
But on the flip side of that, the strength of this defense showed out in a major way with that secondary.
100.
What they did behind that group, and they're going to need some help. But all those numbers that you just pointed out, and the fact that Cincinnati throws for less than 100 yards, the fact that they did that without getting a sack and really without registering a quarterback hurry for the most part.
See, that might be the area where I might be the most concerned.
Yes, that has to change for sure.
Like you need a Vincent Shavers involved there or a Williams Ranieri, and they kept it pretty vanilla. I mean, that would be your assessment.
Absolutely,
my assessment would be they kept it pretty vanilla in terms of there were a whole lot of blitzes. There
was an exotic blitzing.
There was not a lot of different looks. Right. Yeah. Exotic blitz, great buzzword. But yeah, that's another thought I had. Also, quickly here, because we're running out of time, Dylan Raiola touching on Isaiah Hunter. I mean, what did I say a week and a half ago? And it just happened to be right. It wasn't like I'm that much of a sage, but I was talking about Isaiah Hunter. This is a guy who is flying under the radar for Nebraska on this one. He finishes as the leading receiver, has a huge touchdown catch. So he surpassed Dane Key in this game in terms of his yardage. Will it be like that every time? No. But I think this is a guy that we just didn't talk about as much. And here he is in this game. He made one of the biggest plays in the game for Nebraska. And then Luke Lindenmeyer was another guy that we didn't feature in our prime cuts this week. But I think you had to be really pleased with what you saw from him. 5 catches, 47 yards as your tight end one for some people who maybe had some doubts about him or maybe thought Carter Nelson should be appearing higher on the depth chart or whatever. I think you have to really like what you saw from him.
Well, and all those pass catchers are going to be huge now with the unfortunate news of Jenner Bonner. That was
that's a big loss.
The big gut punch right there, him being out for the season. You knew when you saw the injury and just the reaction and everything and how it happened that was most likely going to be the case, but out with the ACL.
Another bite cut for time, too, is Holgerson talking about some of the tackling deals that were going with Cincinnati. And I know some of the fan base was concerned about that, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quickly, Dylan Ryla talking about that touchdown pass to Isaiah Hunter. This is the step forward again, where Dylan played within what the defense, in my opinion, was giving to him, where he didn't feel like he needed to make the big play to force the issue, but also that freedom that's been talked about a lot here in the last week since that game that Dylan has. You're not doing that. We talked about how he carries himself like a veteran. You're not giving him that type of freedom, especially Dana Holgerson, who has no problem taking the reins of the offense. And I think it takes a lot to get in the old trust tree with the nest. If you're a quarterback under the Dana Holgerson offense, you're not getting that freedom unless he completely trusts. And I thought the way he explained that play and what they were hearing, and they were having some communication issues where it was coming in and out of his helmet, that they were still able to roll with things. They were on the same page and allowing not only Dylan Ryla have that freedom, but also to trust one of his guys, as he pointed out too. I think there's a little bit of that maturation process of Dylan not only making good decisions, but also the confidence is reciprocated on that sideline, which I think is huge for his growth.
Yeah, but also it's why Nebraska needs to start making some of those big plays too, right? Like he executed in this game at a high level. Nebraska did, running as many plays as they did, not turning the ball over. That's not sustainable, though.
Yeah.
And so Nebraska is going to have to make some pretty big plays. Now, who's somebody that you can put to the test over and over and over and over again?
Oh,
they'll always deliver.
That was beautiful. And not just our next guest, Mike Schafer of Husker 24/7 Sports.
You can do that to Mike Schafer.
But our wonderful friends at Omaha Steaks.
100.
Hopefully you took advantage of their Labor Day sale. And again, we have another way for you to get a little bit shaved off the price of all your favorite Omaha steaks. Because if you use the code HUDDLE at checkout, you will find that discount, $35 off your order. But I got to tell you this. So my wife, she doesn't like hot dogs normally. She's not a big fan of hot dogs. I love hot dogs because I'm a baseball guy. You as well. So you know.
Well, don't put words in my mouth or hot dogs.
I'm just. But I know when she said we got to fire up the hot dogs, I'm like, wait, what? She's like, those Omaha Steaks hot dogs were so good because she had to try one and she loved it. So if my wife likes the Omaha Steaks hot dogs, she's not a hot dog fan. You will too. Of course, you're going to love the sirloins. Of course, you're going to love that prime cut and just that quality that you get out of every product from Omaha Steaks. But I'm telling you, the hot dogs, not always talked about with Omaha Steaks, sneaky, sneaky good. In fact, they're fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what, nothing goes better with Sunday Night Football than a steak.
Well, that's true.
I mean, come on. This is how I ring out the weekend generally. I've got a steak of some sort, a salad, maybe a little bourbon, maybe something, and Sunday Night Football.
How old are you again?
23.
I love that you're living the 46-year-old life like myself.
I mean, New York strip is good. I enjoyed a New York strip
a glass
last
of scotch
week.
Too.
It's fantastic. You cannot go wrong with Omaha Steaks, no matter what you do. And so, again, as Christmas, other holidays start to arrive, I mean, you want to be forward thinking here. Somebody's going to enjoy this when it comes down to gift-giving season.
Yeah, get fired up for fall grilling with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during the Red Hot Sale event. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code HUDDLE at checkout.
Once again, folks, that's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code HUDDLE at checkout. See site for details.
Continuing on, talking about the upcoming matchup with Nebraska and Akron, but also reflecting a little bit on that Nebraska victory over Cincinnati. Feels like it was a while ago, and I guess it was a little more than a week ago. But we're talking with Mike Schafer, Husker 24/7 Sports. Shafe, I know it's still somewhat raw as most first games are in any season. Nebraska winning, though. I'm curious if you look at this game as a Nebraska won a one-score game, or some people want to dwell on maybe some missed opportunities or some of the weaknesses we were a little concerned about, like the defensive line and other areas. Where do you walk away from Thursday night's win for Nebraska against Cincinnati?
I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Like to start with, you want to walk away 1-0, and Nebraska accomplished that on Thursday night. So that was the biggest thing. Get the win. Don't apologize for wins. After that, it becomes sort of okay, what did everything look like? And it's a bit of a mixed bag, and it should be. It's week one. I think if there's nothing else that should have come out of the weekend for Nebraska fans, it's that your team played on Thursday, they escaped with a win, and then you got to watch the college football world where not everybody who was expected to win won. Not everybody looked good in week one. Most teams looked sloppy, played sloppy, have plenty to work on. And if that sounds familiar, that's kind of like Nebraska, where they weren't necessarily sloppy, but they still left that game with knowing that, hey, the run defense is going to have to get better by the time we get into conference play. We're going to need a little bit more out of our front seven. We have to feel pretty good about what we have in our defensive back room, though, because that wasn't a complete nothing Cincinnati offense that they took the pass away from. And then I think you answered some questions about what kind of player Emmett Johnson can be. I don't know that we've given him enough credit for taking 32 touches in a game where he played it in a phone booth. I mean, it wasn't like he was running free on the highway over there. I mean, he was getting hit all the time, and he kept getting up and answering questions. Now, if you want to go the other route with that, you probably don't want 32 touches a game for Emmett Johnson, and doesn't seem sustainable in the Big Ten, and yet they did what they had to do to win, and I think that's sort of the important thing. And even with Dylan Raiola, and I know I'm jumping around here, but this is sort of what it is. And as you take away from this game on Thursday, it's, man, you would have liked to see him go down the field more. You'd have liked to see him attack more. And then by the end of Bill Belichick's demise with North Carolina on Monday night, you kind of look around and you're like, a lot of teams are playing too high safeties. A lot of teams are trying to take away big plays. A lot of quarterbacks are having to stay underneath, or they're getting burned if they get a little greedy. Dylan Raiola didn't really get greedy. He had one pass that was pretty dangerous as he doubled back to Emmett Johnson a little late there instead of hitting him right away in the flats. But otherwise didn't put the ball in harm's way through the air, took what was available for him, played fairly contained football, didn't make a lot of big mistakes, and kept Nebraska on the tracks. It wasn't sexy, but Nebraska doesn't have to be sexy in week one. Nebraska probably doesn't have to be sexy all season. You know, that's not exactly what they need. They needed competence. They needed a clean football game, and they needed to stay, between the ditches. And I think they accomplished all of that on Thursday. I know as someone who felt a little bit let down with what we saw initially on Thursday, kind of reverse course, because you do have to remember it is week one. Like, they should get plenty of opportunity to grow.
Mike, I'm curious your thoughts. Perhaps that trend, that last little bit you're saying, applies to the defensive line as well, but have the things that the coaching staff have said about the defensive line in the days since the game assuaged maybe some of your concerns, or perhaps some of the concerns that the fan base might have? Or as you look back on that game, are there still things that you think, this could get scary come Michigan or other games down the line?
Yeah, I think it can definitely get scary. It can get scary at any point. I mean, even last year when you had Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker, the Indiana game still happened. I mean, it doesn't take much for things to completely go against you and to snowball, or quicksand if you're big on the replacements and Shane Falco. So you never know what's lurking around the corner. But I think part of it for me is I walked out of Thursday's game thinking this defense was going to need time coming into the season to find itself, because there's a lot of guys who are getting playing time at high dosages that they've never had before. And so, a guy like Riley Van Poppel, we really liked as a part-time player. That doesn't necessarily mean he's ready for being a guy who has 60 snaps a game, and that's not even what he played. Same with Elijah Judy, same with Cam Lenhart, same with Keona Davis. They're all having to grow into this together. And so I went in with the mentality going into Thursday and into the season, hey, the defense is going to need some time to find itself. Look, they've got different coaches. They've got a different defensive coordinator. They might have a little bit different philosophy than what they had under Tony White. They certainly have different personnel in their front seven. And so I allowed them some grace that I really wasn't giving the offense, which I kind of just expected to be this fine-tuned machine, which says more about me than it really does about Nebraska football. But back to the defense, so I think if we allow for them to sort of play their way into this season And we know these next 2 weeks aren't against great opponents, but they can still fine-tune. They can still find some things. And I believe that John Butler has the ability to scheme some stuff up depending on who they're playing. And not every team has a Brendan Sorsby. And if you look at Nebraska's schedule, there's good athletes at quarterback. I don't know if there's guys that are going to hurt them in the same way that he did as a runner. I just don't know that they have a lot of that on their schedule. And so it's different matchups. And I think you have to sort of allow for the growth of players and just assume that it's not going to look like this week in and week out.
Despite return yards and what have you, the third phase looked a lot more button up. And I think that's where a lot of us were hoping that, kind of like what you said, Nebraska doesn't have to look sexy. And you don't apologize for maybe not having the eyeball test in every game or the style points. I think the third phase, I think special teams is exactly the same way. Nobody's asking for them to be a top 5 special teams producing collective unit, but just being reliable, being able to do things that they consistently didn't do in the last 4 or 5, heck, even 6, 7 years, if you think about it. Just seeing a long field goal made, seeing what Archie was able to do and flip the field like that. Is that what we're looking for? I mean, if we're getting that consistently, can we honestly say that, hey, this is the upgrade you need for that phase to be successful, especially in one-score games?
Yeah, I think the strongest takeaway or the biggest reason for optimism for Nebraska football in 2025 is right there in what you talked about. I think Archie Wilson in his American football debut, not collegiate football debut, not, just first time he's ever played the game, and he's doing it in Arrowhead Stadium, and he's being asked in a key situation with 2 minutes and change, we need you to pin somebody. And he just did it. Sort of calmly, effectively, like it was the open practice back at the beginning of August when he was putting it, he was putting it inside the 5-yard line. But he did a great job with that. Kyle Cunanan, sort of a clutch play in that game, knocking in that 52-yard field goal because Nebraska looked a little shaky. They needed to get their legs under him. They didn't want that drive to go to waste, and he nailed that kick. And then the name that never gets brought up, Kevin Gallick, and he wants it that way. He doesn't want to be talked about. Kevin Gallick would love to be interviewed because he's doing well. Kevin Gallick does not want his name out there any other reason, and it wasn't on Thursday because the snaps were spot on. So swapping out the personnel, Mike Eckler's handpicked guys in 2 of those 3 cases really helped out for Nebraska on Thursday night. It should make people feel better about special teams. There's absolutely areas that can continue to improve, and I think just like the defense, it will. But immediately you saw the effect of Mike Eckler choosing Kyle Cunanan, calling him, getting him to come from Cal and out of the portal, getting Archie Wilson to come from Pro Kick Australia because this is a guy he's known about. And they immediately paid dividends. I think that should make people feel good because you just look back at last year and you think, well, hey, if they had Archie Wilson or if they had Kyle Cunanan or if they had Kevin Gallick, would we be talking about this season and the excitement of this season in an entirely different way because Nebraska would have more wins? I think the answer is yes. And so I think there's a reason, if Nebraska's going to play in a lot of these one-score games, having good special teams can really be the difference maker.
Husker 247's Mike Schafer with us here on the Husker Huddle. And Schafer, I want to take a big picture look and a pause on the present and a look ahead to the future for recruiting for Nebraska in 2026 and 2027. Can you give us an idea of where things sit with those 2 classes and what fans should have an eye on over the next few months?
Yeah, I mean, in 2026, they sort of assembled what I feel like is the bulk of their class at this point. We'll see some guys come in over the next month or so that might take official visits that are committed elsewhere in 2026, especially if Nebraska, gets to 3-0 and they've got that Michigan game. That's going to be a big visit weekend for 26, for 27, for 28, because Nebraska's working ahead. And they've got guys like Larry Miles, who's going to have a really productive year down there in Florida. He's someone we could see re-rated, potentially on 24/7 Sports because he's been a very good wide receiver and he dominated in the camp settings. And if he does it again at the high school level for a team that's competing for a state title and what's the most talent-rich, state in the country. A guy like that stands out. Danny Odom, another guy down in Florida by way of Pennsylvania. He's at, I believe, First Academy down there in Orlando. He's been playing in big games for the last 2 years. That's a 4-star defensive back that Ohio State really wanted. Matt Rule was able to get on the phone late in the process, convinced him to choose Nebraska because they have always shown interest in him and have been recruiting him hard, and he feels comfortable there. You got a guy like Claude Mpuma coming out of Chicago, the big bookend left tackle that you dream about, that he can grow into being a football player that has a basketball player's body, that has a basketball player's mentality, that's just starting to play football, but he can be big, powerful, and you could lock him in for 3 years as your left tackle. So they've got some really high-end guys that are interesting in that class, and a lot of their classes is some players in 2026 where Luke Sorensen is maybe flying a little bit under the radar, or guys of that nature. And so I think Nalin Scott, the wide receiver who's committed to Arizona State, I don't know that we talk about him as much, or players like that. And so I think Nebraska has some interesting pieces that they've assembled. Jace Reynolds right here at home, I think he at Elkhorn North is going to be a really fun player to watch if you make your way out to one of those games in Elkhorn this year. A guy who could line up at safety, linebacker, nickelback, all in the same defensive series. So they have guys like that, but where you really get excited if you're into recruiting is what's happening in 2027, where you have commitments from Torrey Pittman and Trey Taylor. Trey Taylor is going to try to be at 6 of Nebraska's 7 home games this year. He's already got a collection of guys that are expected to come out from Michigan. There's already a 2027 that's committed to Pitt, and Jordan Thomas that I've talked to that's visiting this weekend for the Akron game. I think in part because he is familiar with sort of the word-of-mouth excitement that's going on at Nebraska with the facilities and some of the young players that are there and what Trey Taylor's doing in peer recruiting. And so I think you look at 2027 and you think if Nebraska can put together some wins here this season, try to build on a little bit what they have in that 26 class, but really position themselves in 27 and 28, they could get back to being a national recruiter and a team that could have a top 15 class. I don't know that they have the ability to get in the top 10. They'd really need to win at a high level. But that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Nebraska wanting to be a playoff team, Nebraska wanting to be a factor in the Big Ten, getting talent like that. Then you got to keep it, and that's really hard. But getting them to campus for these games this season is going to be a huge, huge deal.
Shafe, one quick question before we let you go here. I wanted to ask you as you get into the Akron game, and there's a recruiting element to that with the night game at Memorial Stadium. We know it always does draw visitors, but also just this team taking that next step forward. We know the cliche. Grant and I have already talked about it. Between week 1 and week 2, it's always discussed. But when everything you brought up about what you saw at Nebraska against Cincinnati in a win, mind you, and a 1-score win too, which is great to see. Where do you think the biggest jump is from what you saw on Thursday to what you'll see Saturday? And what area or what are you hoping to see the biggest jump in that game against Akron?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see Nebraska just come out and show that they can run the football. Akron struggled to kind of stop Wyoming's rushing attack. I'd like to see some explosive plays. We didn't see much. There was one play over 20 yards. And I would like to see Nebraska's front 7 have a nice game. I mean, again, are they going to shut Akron out like Wyoming did? That's really tough to predict. It's hard to call a shutout. But I've attempted to do it in the past with little to no success, so I won't necessarily try here this week.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do.
A lot of it is don't overthink it. Don't get greedy. Just play good football. I mean, if they play good football, the result will take care of itself. They'll be able to flood the bench and get guys in for mop-up duty and all of that sort of stuff. So I just think for Nebraska, keep doing what you're trying to do. Play clean football. Don't overextend yourselves. And see what happens from there. You're the better team. There's no reason to make it more hard than you have to.
It's Mike Schafer, Husker 24/7 Sports. Shafe, anytime our paths just coincide. It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all on this side here.
The new Omahan.
That's right.
Or
well, you're a Benningtonian now.
That's what it's called,
A
Benningtonian?
Benningtonian or a Badger until they open up the new school. But welcome to the neighborhood, by the way, too.
I appreciate it. Maybe you'll hear me from across State Street when the Vikings are putting it on the Bears next Monday.
I mean, we're so close. Do we get together on Monday night to watch the opener?
I don't know that either of us needs that for the week for the first game, but I think we find neutral territory to meet in the subsequent weeks.
We need to find another bowling alley bar that we can enjoy some Sundays with.
There's only one. There's only one Sahara, and the people that frequent that Sahara, and there will be nothing like that in my life again. That was a tremendous year.
Maybe one day we'll bust out the jersey.
Terrible Viking season, but made up for with that.
Usually a terrible Bears season too, but we all had jerseys on, so that was fun.
Yeah, well, that Peyton Hillis jersey got sold for $10 at a garage sale.
My Johnny Knox jersey, I don't think it made one of my previous moves, so it's all good. Johnny Knox, baby.
Forgot about that.
Schafe, all the best, my man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff from Mike Schafer, Husker 24/7 Sports. And it is time here on the Husker Huddle for our weekly mailbag questions. Hello, mailbaggers. Appreciate the questions. Going to get to those right out of the gate because we've got questions when it comes to not only the recent game, but the upcoming game. So we're going to start with Ethan. By the way, if you do want to get a question for next week's show, we do encourage you. Hit us up, email huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. But Ethan asked the question, with Akron being 106 of 133 on third down percentage last year, and Nebraska being just outside of the top 25, 30th, I believe, in defensive third down, how much will John Butler and Matt Rule play around with different looks and schemes, or do you think they will play an honest game for 4 quarters?
The honest game.
Honest game. I think there was...
Good man.
Good man, a good honest man. I think you brought this up earlier in the show that it was a pretty basic approach to try to get after the quarterback.
Oops.
And Sorsby, now I understood that too, because the more aggressive you are against a dual threat quarterback like Sorsby was, that can also work to your detriment too, where teams, and especially experienced quarterbacks like a Brendan Sorsby, can use that aggressiveness against you and be able to work around it and be able to maybe beat you to the edge, especially if you're trying to flush him out in the interior gaps. What I would say, first of all, Akron, you never overlook an opponent, but this is an offense on the struggle bus right now. And so that third down percentage from a year ago, it is, when you literally don't score a point, it's
hard to get worse than that.
It really is. Now, as we heard from, I thought there was a really good tone by the team this week of they expect Akron to, for lack of a better term, come in pissed off in all facets, especially offensively. So are they going to take more chances? If they get into third down, are they going to try to throw some different things at Nebraska that maybe they didn't see on film? Because this is a team that's they're searching for an identity offensively to try to keep that offense on the field. So I'm not necessarily worried about last year's number, but to the other question about, is this more of a conservative approach? I think Nebraska, if they really have to get exotic against this Akron offense, to me, that's a problem. So I think you are going to be very conservative, and you're probably hoping to generate pressure with your guys up front, not necessarily having to get overly creative when it does come to applying pressure. And if you have to against a team like that, again, that to me is a little bit of a red flag.
I think you're probably right about that. I can understand going from Tony White to John Butler. There's been a difference, at least in that first game. Now, I think at the same time, Butler is saying, look, he said that as much in the press conference. Maybe I need to be bringing an extra rusher in that sort of situation against a guy like Sorsby, try to clog up different holes in the middle. So maybe that changes. But I agree with you. I think they'll keep it fairly, mundane isn't the right word, but they'll keep it par for the course for these next 2 games. I don't think there's any sense in revealing a bunch of sort of stuff that you don't necessarily have to before the Michigan game. Next, Stan the Man, who says Nebraska now receiving votes, or still receiving votes in the AP poll. They've got 2 easily winnable games on the schedule the next 2 weeks. Oh, well, Stan did. Is there a scenario where Nebraska could win, but it not be enough to crack the top 25 by Michigan week? I think that's a scenario no matter what. Unless Nebraska puts 70 on Akron and 70 on Houston Christian, or even 50, like 50-0, 50-3, that sort of thing. I don't think Nebraska is going to get there. Their major opportunity to impress voters prior to the Michigan game was that Cincinnati contest. And look, whether it ends up playing out that way or not, the perception of Nebraska and the perception of Cincinnati coming into that game was Nebraska was a 9-3 team, or going to be 9-3, and Cincinnati was this 5-7 sort of dumpster fire from a year ago. Look, maybe it turns out that way, maybe it doesn't. But the perception nationally probably is that Nebraska underperformed in that game, got out by the skin of its teeth, and even if you beat Akron and Houston Christian by wide margins, I don't know if that's enough to get Nebraska into the polls by Michigan week without any major national TV opportunities to show out and stun some people.
If there's major disruption at the back end of the top 25, okay, possibly. But
sure.
And this is where Nebraska is right now, right? This is a team that I remember talking to someone from Vegas when it came to handicapping Nebraska, and they always said, "Can we trust Nebraska?" And I think that's probably the best thing to look at Nebraska right now. Just the overall identity of the Nebraska football program in its current state. And that has nothing to do with Matt Rule. That has nothing to do with the personnel that they have. It's just a Nebraska program identity thing right now in 2025. Can you trust them? And the only time you're really going to have that opportunity to trust them and see them potentially thrust themselves in the top 25 will be that Michigan game. So I'm with you. I just don't think there's anything you do against Houston Christian or Akron, despite having that disruption in the back end of the top 25, that could put Nebraska in the top 25.
Even
for
Kansas, I would probably think it has a better shot to climb into the top 25 before Nebraska does.
But let's face it, you're right about the perception, and that's what these polls are right now, this early. And
especially when it's AP. I mean,
exactly. But if you're 3-0 going into that Michigan game and you've seen improvement each week, that atmosphere is still going to be a top 25 level atmosphere.
I mean, preseason rankings right now stink because they're so focused and shifted by, some of it's shifted by the networks, what the networks want to have ranked teams on in their big games. Some of it, a lot of it is shifted by last year's perception. And, it's tough, I think, for AP voters to watch every game and watch every team and be able to be informed about ranking everybody. And we see it in some of the rankings and how the poll actually comes out week to week. And we certainly know the advanced metrics are bad.
Didn't cover the spread.
Yeah, that.
Got to cover that spread.
Justin.
This one's from Justin. Back-to-back games with Akron and HCU that are lower-tiered opponents. Who should Nebraska fans be watching for that might be able to elevate their game and depth chart position by the time Big Ten schedule gets competitive? I think it's that first game against Michigan. I'll be honest, though. I like the fact that you have that Cincinnati tester, give you an idea of seeing what still needs to be tightened up, but you have two games against opponents that on paper you're more talented than. So that should hopefully build up not only the confidence, but also some of those in-game reps with guys that need to collectively play position groups together like that defensive line. So that's my whole hope, is that these next two games can serve that purpose, but it's no question without any hesitation that Michigan is going to be that big test.
I mean, as far as it comes to personnel that Nebraska fans should be watching for, look, I mean, it's running back. I mean, you need to see more from. It's funny because Mekhi Nelson was not the first running back in the game after Emmett Johnson. It was Isaiah Mosey, and so it's between those two guys. Like, you need to have one of those two guys show that they're a clear, not necessarily a clear number two, but a clearly capable backup to Emmett Johnson. And look, I think Emmett showed workhorse ability. But Nebraska's had a really tough time keeping running backs healthy throughout the entire year. I mean, I think the last time I think you can truly say that was probably Divine Ozigbo. But you need backups behind Emmett Johnson to take some of the load off him. Everybody knows that at this point. That's what I want to see in these two games. Can somebody hit that next gear and then follow through and create something that you can feel comfortable with behind Emmett Johnson?
I don't disagree with that, but I'm going to throw one that maybe is more important to me in these next two games that can elevate it as we get into that Michigan game too. I'm going to look at the pass catchers outside of Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter, because you're now down a big-time weapon in this offense in Jaron Bonner. Hello, tight ends. Not only your Luke Lindenmeyers, but also your Heiner Carbergs, your Carter Nelsons, can you utilize those guys with their athleticism as well? So just the pass catchers outside of Hunter and Dane Key, that's where I'd like to see who might be able to develop some of that confidence going into conference play.
Lastly here, it's from Tony in Denver, and Tony says, it was nice to see Holgerson and Raiola, that offense, move between the 20s and do it effectively. Unfortunately, he kind of felt like the compressed red zone seemed to present some challenges. So any ideas on how the Huskers can improve their red zone offense? I mean, I'll let you kind of share your thoughts on this one. I was not... I think everybody kind of gets tight in the red zone. I think that includes the fans. Yeah. And so I was not terribly disappointed other than the false start. I mean, I thought that was rough. Now, like, I had one friend on the drive that resulted in the Dane Key touchdown. He was pissed that they ran the ball on 3rd and goal from the 4 and got a yard. And he was basically like, what in the world was that play? Mm-hmm. And I remember reading the text in the group chat in the press box and thinking, it was clearly they were not running that just to kick the field goal.
Yeah.
Like, they were running the ball here on 3rd and goal. They were going for it on 4th down no matter what.
Yes.
So, although I will agree with Tony in that even though they were 2 for 3 in the red zone, I would say that like you can tell it was labored at times.
Oh yeah, there were times that you're watching that offense,
does not feel
thinking,
fluid.
Ooh, yes,
there. And that's what you wanted to get to.
There was some reminiscence of 2 years ago when Heinrich was running the offense, and at times offense looked hard. Whether it was inside the red zone or not, it looked like it was very hard to accomplish.
And maybe there's some multiplicity there that because what I felt like Nebraska showed in terms of its red zone offense, they had the multiplicity resulted in the Dane Key touchdown because that was an option play.
Yes.
But a lot of what we've seen is, okay, we're going to, fake it a couple of times and throw it to Bonner in the flat, or we're going to run it straight ahead, or, corner fade. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like that maybe is enough. So maybe there's something else that needs to come into the picture there. Yep. I feel like you're missing what you have in a lot of the college offenses in the ability to run a read option and incorporate the quarterback run in the red zone. But the windows are tight, and it's year one or game one, and so I can understand it. But
2 things real quickly on that. I don't mean to be the RTDB guy, run the damn ball guy, but this is where I also think tight end play is going to be paramount, because I think you have creativity with what you can use with those types of athletes there. And then this goes back to something we've talked about from day one, the core plays. And it's not just those core plays that you can have when you're at your own 40 or on a 3rd and short. It's the core plays that you have in the red zone. What was one of the first time we ever got a chance to see this team practicing was their first, I think they were in Shells that day, but they were running red zone offense. So establishing those core plays, which again, it doesn't necessarily happen right before the first game. Those are things that you still kind of develop in those live game reps that they're getting right now. So I think that's also going to be a big part of the red zone success for this team to have that consistently, is going to be those core plays that they just know to trust where certain guys are going to be, and that they can trust those guys in front of them, that if even on a third and goal at the 4, that you feel confident that you can move the line of scrimmage and you can get in and not have to rely on a 4th goal at the 1 yard line.
Well, that's our mailbag. We appreciate everybody who sent names in, or names and questions.
Thanks for
we'll take
thanks for
both
putting your names
those.
on too.
Yeah. Please sign these so that we know who to thank.
We'll just make up names if we have to.
Yeah. Husker Huddle at mybooberradio.com. Get those in by Tuesday, maybe when it's fresh on your mind, but usually Tuesday, Wednesday afternoons, usually about the cutoff for us on those. So go ahead and get those in. And now we move to our player interview segment.
That's right. One of the guys had a chance to be up at the podium, but also just a really cool redemption story, finally healthy. Grant had a chance to catch up with left tackle Teddy Prochazka.
It's time for Huskers All Access, brought to you by Access Bank. My name is Grant Hansen. I'm here alongside Teddy Prochazka. And Teddy, how good did it feel for you just to get back out there at Arrowhead on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, it was a real special place to be playing my first game back. You know, Arrowhead's a really cool, thing to be a part of, playing there. And just been a long time coming, a long road that I had last year till now, but it just felt good. Felt great.
Tell me about that road. I mean, I think a lot of the recovery, all that stuff happens behind the scenes, what's something you'd like the fans to know about the process that you went through to get back out there on the field?
Yeah, I mean, I've been through it before my freshman year, so it wasn't anything new. It was a lot of early mornings before the team got in here doing some rehab. Team's out practicing. I'm inside working out, doing rehab. Teams. I was fortunate enough last year, though, to travel to games, so, help up Gunnar Gatula, who was starting, and, he's a young guy, just kind of being there to help him out. When I got a chance, I'd come out to practice and coach up, the younger guys, making sure they were doing the technique right. But, I mean, it's a lot of just grindy days that, just seem like they're never going to end, but eventually they do, and you're playing football again.
Tell us about that progression at the left tackle. You mentioned Gunnar. You got Elijah Pritchett over there as well. Just how are things progressing there, and the cohesiveness of that entire offensive line as you have a number of new guys in new spots?
Yeah, I mean, I think every day, Coach Raiola talks about coming in with something to improve on in the run and the pass game. And, the best way that we can improve this team is improving yourself. So that we take that mindset, I know every guy does, whether it's the fourth string right guard or the first string left tackle, like everybody's just working together to improve on something. So I know that improves the O-line efficiency, and it improves our, seeing the game one set of eyes. And I think just working together, communicating really just helps us with that.
Donovan is the longest tenured assistant coach on this staff. How valuable has the consistency been from him and that stability at your position coach?
I mean, it's huge. We speak the same language we've been doing and working the same technique for however many years now, and it's time that we put in the hours of drills, we put in the hours of practice and reps on task, and now it's time for us to really hone in and perfect this and take it to games and show this is the technique that we're using. This is our standard and style of blocking. So it just really helps a lot that Donnie's been here for as long as he has and been preaching this technique to us.
Who's somebody on this team that cracks you up during practice or in the locker room or in class or wherever you might run into him?
Oh, gosh. Cortez Mills is pretty funny. Jacory's pretty funny. Rocco and Henry are both pretty funny. Turner and Gunnar are all pretty funny. I like to laugh, so I have fun.
It's interesting. Jacory, when he was talking with us earlier in the season, he said, "Hey, look, I'm a small guy, but I'm not that small of a guy."
Yeah.
And I think there's this fear Husker fans have sometimes, and he alluded to it, that he gets hit, he takes a big hit, and then he pops right back up again. And he did that in KC. Mm-hmm. What do you think of his performance and the receiving unit?
Yeah, I mean, just the receiving core is amazing. All those guys are really great. I remember watching that play. Jacory got hit, and I'm running over. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he even psyched us out sometimes. He takes a big hit, and we're like, oh gosh, that's it. And pops right back up and gets back on the line. We're like, all right, perfect, next play. But, I just think that's a testament to how hard he works to take care of his body. You could take those hits and still keep playing. So, it's congrats to him for that. That's awesome.
Finally here, Teddy, what's the next step for this offense, for the offensive line, as you guys get ready for Akron this week?
I mean, it's just really a race against the clock to improve. The biggest jump is week 1 to week 2. So I think just efficiency, first and second down efficiency is one of our biggest things that we want to work on, and just keep pressing the offense. And we know what we want it to look like. We just got to go out there and do it.
He's Teddy Prochazka, and this has been Huskers All Access, brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason.
Good stuff again there with Teddy Prochazka as we close out this Husker Huddle podcast for the week, getting ready for Nebraska, Akron. We're going to give you our predictions on that. Take a look at some of the numbers where Vegas has this game. It's a huge number.
Massive
number in favor of the Big Red in the home opener, even though it felt like a home game out at Arrowhead Stadium. 2 big games this week in college football. Now we should reset. If we're keeping a scoreboard, you and I, we were not stellar in what we did last week.
Hey, we got the Nebraska game
We
right.
did get the Nebraska game right, although I think that we both
You were
took,
2-1.
Well,
so
we both took them by the points in the spread.
Oh.
Even though we're not counting that, we were both wrong in that aspect.
Sure.
But yes. LSU taking care of Clemson, and then we saw Texas go into Ohio State and come up short.
Yeah.
And so you had Texas winning that one. That's where I was able to flip it on you. I had Ohio State winning in a game that a lot of people were talking about this low scoring weekend. Remember we saw the over under for that one. We're like,
yeah,
wow,
I was surprised.
That's low.
And then the under hit.
You're watching that game play out. So I want to start with the Cyhawk game out in Ames, Iowa.
Sure.
I think, first of all, I've been so impressed. And for people who know me, you would know that I'm a Matt Campbell apologist. I think Matt Campbell's a great coach. I think he's awesome. I loved him when he came from Toledo to Iowa State and how quickly he got that thing going and really put his mark on that Iowa State football program. You remember the year that Nebraska was searching for a coach in 22.
Yep.
Matt Campbell's name was brought up quite a bit. And Iowa State, that was the one year where they kind of took a step back. So I remember getting the questions a lot of, well, don't you think Matt Campbell he's already peaked at Iowa State? I'm like, no, I think he's still a very good coach. And he's proven that since then.
And then they were a playoff contender last year. And
look at what they've done so far. They go out to Dublin. They win that crazy game against K-State and then Farmageddon, the Irish version of Farmageddon. And then jet lag and all. I get it. You're playing an FCS team, but they pounded South Dakota and really kind of did it in a way of like, yeah, thanks for showing up. And again, that jet lag thing, we've seen that.
Sure.
Teams coming off of that.
Well, I wrecked Kansas State.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you look at where Iowa State is going into this game, playing this home game against that rival in Iowa. And Iowa looked fine, but Mark Gronowski, they didn't let him really open it up throwing the football. I know that's not what he's asked to really do. He's going to be a playmaker more with his legs. But it was underwhelming with what they want to do in the passing game. There was a lot of similar elements to Iowa. Look, a win's a win. They beat Albany, and they out-muscled them like they should have. I just think Iowa State's in a much better place right now. Now, that game is 4.5. 3.5 favor in Iowa State. I like the home team to cover in this one. I'm taking the Cyclones to move on to 3-0. I'm going to take them to win this one, as it typically is a tight game, a one-score game, but I think they cover. I'm going to go 27-21 in favor of the Cyclones.
Yeah, so you've got the overhitting here. Mm-hmm. I do not. In this case, 41.5 is the total for this game. I like you have Iowa State winning. I mean, again, you're just going off quarterbacks, and now we have more information on quarterbacks than we had a week ago when I went off quarterbacks and picked Arch Manning. Oof. But
he'll only get better.
I feel pretty good about picking Rocco Becht. And this is a guy that over the last couple of weeks, there's started been more national conversation about him, and rightfully so. Look, he'll be the best quarterback in this game. I think Iowa State gets the win. The only way I see the total going over 41.5 is if Iowa State wins in a blowout. But that's not what I think we're going to see here. I think we'll see low scoring, but competitive. We'll say 20-10. Iowa State takes down Iowa on big noon kickoff.
If this thing gets out of a one-score game, it'll be because Iowa State wins going away. But this thing is going to be tight. It always is. Kirk Ferentz and that team, look, they still have that same identity with the defense and the special teams. If Gronowski can be the playmaker that they brought him in to be, I still like that addition for Iowa. We'll see if he opens it up a little bit more. But yeah, I like the Clones. The other big game involving Nebraska's opponent in 2 weeks, Michigan, going out to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Sooners. Home team Sooners favored by 4.5 in this particular matchup. Again, Michigan, I wasn't impressed with what I saw.
Really?
There was a lot that, I get it. You're breaking in a brand new freshman quarterback, and there are things about his game that you can definitely see why he was so highly coveted coming in. Oklahoma and this whole environment, and don't you get the feeling Oklahoma with Brent Venables is in a very much, hey, we're in the SEC now. We need to prove our worth. I thought they did a great job of bouncing back last year number one in the SEC for that program. I feel like they are on the rise when it comes to games like this, especially home games. I'm going to take Oklahoma to win this game. I know I keep rolling with the home team here. I'm going to take Oklahoma to win this game. And I think they get after Michigan at the end of this one. I think they cover the 4.5. In fact, I'm going to take Oklahoma to win 24-14.
Yeah, this is tough. We're going to end up agreeing here again, I think. And it's tough because you have Mateer at quarterback, and you really like what you saw from him last week. I mean, 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception, but threw for over 350 yards. It was granted, I understand the quality of opponent, but I mean, this was a very, very solid opener for Oklahoma. Michigan, I liked what I saw from Bryce Underwood. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to say, I think this will be closer than you thought it was, or that you think it will be.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Oklahoma's at home. This is big for the conference wars, as it were.
Yes.
And when it comes to SEC, Big Ten, and the SEC coming out on top here, and I think they do in this one. So we'll say this is probably closer to something that's maybe in the 27-20 Oklahoma over Michigan. I think Underwood does not play his best game for Michigan, but he does enough for you to think, for a freshman, he didn't do that bad. And ultimately, though, the experience of Mateer in this group and the stakes for Oklahoma and the stakes of where Brett Venables is at in his tenure as the head coach ends up being one of the deciding factors. So now we go to the
Nebraska and Akron game. So first of all, I mentioned that number is huge. 34.5 in favor of the Huskers and their 2025 home opener at Memorial Stadium. And again, Akron, by now, they were shut out by Wyoming in a game that was very Big Ten-esque, a 10-0 football contest. But I know everybody's asked the question we were just discussing with Mike Schafer. Could you pitch the shutout? Can you predict the shutout? And no, we're not necessarily in the business of saying it's going to be a shutout. Now, the over-under in this game is actually 47.5. So if you are looking to take the over, you're thinking it's going to be Nebraska in the 40s with Akron very, very little, which there's reason to, even with some of the struggles that Nebraska had defensively, this is a much different offense that they're going up against. That number's too big for me to say Nebraska does cover this one.
I agree.
The Football Power Index right now has Nebraska as a 96.4% chance to win this one. Again, over under 47.5. Huskers laying 34.5. Finley, very unimpressive with what he did at the quarterback position. And I think this is going to be a different environment than what we saw when it comes to this defense feeling like, for lack of a better term, it's party time. They're going to get after him, and I don't think as we talked about earlier, they're not going to have to do a lot exotic blitzing to be disruptive in the backfield. I think this is going to be a challenged group, that front seven. And I think they're going up against the type of offense that is much soul searching as they're trying to do and trying to find that type of offensive identity. I just don't think they have the personnel to do that. And I think you're going to see a lot of activity in the secondary. I think you might see 3, possibly more turnovers, possibly 3 interceptions or more in this game. I'm taking the defense for Nebraska. They might give up a garbage touchdown or 10 points in this one. But I think the defense shows out. I think they answer that call. And then I'm looking for this offense, much like I said last week, broken record. They are also going to open things up. Again, without revealing too much, I think there's just going to be enough power up front where it's going to be very balanced. I think Nebraska throws for over 250, but I think they also run close to 150 to 200 in this. Very balanced, over 450 yards of total offense for Nebraska. I'm going to take them to win this game by a score of 42-10.
It's a good score, and I think that's probably somewhere where I think I would feel comfortable as well. Look, I think Nebraska will maybe score a little bit less and maybe give up a little bit less. This is a very offensively challenged Akron team. And the stat of the week actually comes from Joseph Meyer at Husker Online, the intern there. And I want to give him credit for this because it was a really good stat. I was reading some of his work today, and Akron has returned from last year's team 3 guys who scored a touchdown a year ago. So of the pieces that are added to this team, there's not a lot there.
Yeah.
Now, Nebraska does get tested a little bit because Akron has incorporated a Wildcat quarterback and consistently done that. So Nebraska will see a little bit of that, which is helpful because you get to see basically an after test to what you had a week ago and a chance to see if you can clean some things up. So I like that for Nebraska, just the ability to see that. I want to see some more things that are down the field, some more big plays. Can Nebraska do that? Can they find a way to separate? What if a team plays that shell coverage that Cincinnati played all year long?
You'd be dumb not to.
But, can Nebraska find a way around that if they see that? And if they don't, can they make some big plays? That's one of the things I'm keyed in on. And then additionally, can a number 2 running back start to develop? Do we see a storyline coming through there? Because, look, Dana Holgerson went with the hot hand. That was Emmett Johnson. He's clearly the RB1. There is no doubt about that. You still need some help for him. You still need to be able to get him a breather and know that you're getting more than just 2 yards at a ceiling. So that's where my head's at this week. I think Nebraska, again, is a little bit better defensively, but maybe not as many points offensively. I say Nebraska wins this one 34-7.
Okay. So neither of us have them covering that big 34.5.
34.5 is ridiculous.
No, yeah, I'm not.
I don't know where that number's coming from.
I'm not there. And hey, if they hit that, good for them. That's a big step forward, even despite the opponent. That's a step forward, but we'll see. Going to be a good atmosphere. Night games at Memorial Stadium, always a lot of fun.
And then we'll be back with you on the radio on Sunday morning. I can't forget that.
Yes, Sunday morning. Husker Hindsight. We'll be rolling that out. That's our reaction show. It'll be on all of our Boomer Radio stations, so make sure you check that out. Speaking of Boomer Radio, don't forget Husker game day coverage on Saturday. We'll get underway at 2:30 with the pregame coverage. 6:30 is your kickoff at Memorial Stadium with the Huskers Radio Network crew. Looking forward to it. Let's see what types of improvements.
What's next?
I think we both feel very confident they're getting to 2-0, but how do you look getting to 2-0?
Yes.
And we'll talk about it Sunday morning at 11 a.m. on all of our Boomer Radio network. Until then, for Grant Hansen, I'm Nick Handley. Appreciate you watching and listening to the Husker Huddle. We'll talk to you next week.